the first question.
We're
You
starting.
start the
We're
first
live right
question.
now. So we are live right now. So I'm going to just take myself out and hang on, everyone, because
Wow.
we're on. Good morning, everyone. It's Saturday morning. We got a little confusing start there. More people, the live button started before I was ready. So good morning. Welcome to Getting Back to Zero, our Saturday morning super start. Hope everyone's got some good plans for the weekend. We have a TLC guest that I'm very excited to join us this morning, and Peggy's joined us as well to help ask some questions. But Susan I met her on the TLC, the Luckiest Club group that I am a big fan of, a big support group. And she is a photographer, which I dabbled in for a long time, but every time I saw her, she was in some cottage somewhere with the most incredible scenery. And I thought, who the heck is this person that is living a life in every scenic location? It just looked fantastic. So I've always loved Susan, but I've also been very jealous of her. But the photography aspect always kind of intrigued me, and I know it's been a huge part of her sobriety journey. So I'm going to bring both Peggy and Susan in. Welcome, everyone. How you doing?
Great.
Great.
Thanks.
Well, Susan, I'm so glad you joined us, and I'm just gonna I'm gonna let you just start from the beginning of how you ended up. I call you the sober shutterbug, is kind of my affectionate term for you. But maybe we can start a page or a logo. That could be your name for down the road. But anyways, what's your story and how did you end up here with us and getting into the photography world?
Okay. So hi everybody, I'm Susan. I live in Clarksville, Tennessee, which is about 45 minutes north of Nashville. I am here because I was an art professor at Austin Peay State University, where I taught photography for 38 years, and I retired 2 years ago in May of 2019. But I grew up in Indiana and attended Indiana University, Indiana State University. I knew I wanted to be an artist from childhood. My first memory is loving paint by numbers. I also studied dance when I was young. I loved both painting and dance. Anyway, there was alcohol in my family everywhere. Both parents were functioning alcoholics, divorced when I was 7. I don't want to spend too much time on my past, but anyway, and so I started drinking at age 15 with friends because that's what we did, it wasn't really problematic throughout college. I was a good student, went to grad school, married my first husband in 78, moved to El Paso, Texas, because he was in the Army as a nurse, and then ended up at Fort Campbell here in Clarksville. And then when we split up, he moved back to Indiana. I stayed here with the kids, who were 6 and 4 at the time of our divorce. And then I met Billy 30 years ago. He interviewed for a job at our department. I was on the committee that hired him. We were friends, and then as the Southern gentleman that he is, he courted me and we dated and we got married 25 years ago. So I have 2 older children, which is hard to say children, from my first marriage, who will be 39 and 41 next month. And then Billy and I adopted a baby from Guatemala when he was 7 months old, and he will be 22 in a month.
Wow.
Yeah. So my story is a lot about, and I know a lot of people have problems with this term, but I think people understand it. that I was a high functioning alcoholic, and that people didn't know. I mean, people knew that I liked to drink and I had a really high tolerance. So if we went out to happy hour with friends or colleagues, you know, I could, have 3 margaritas and still feel and look perfectly fine to drive home. And I would be the one having the 2 drinks before I met the friends for drinks, and then making sure I had more at home for when I got home, And so it was definitely an accumulative thing and a progressive disease in my case, because there were periods during the time, even during the time Billy and I've been married, where I could moderate, where he would say, this is a problem, your drinking is a problem. And I would say, okay. Well, I won't have it in the house. I'll only allow myself some if we go out to dinner or we go to a party or we have some people over. And then that would work for about, I don't know, that time period in which that deal I made with myself would work got shorter and shorter toward the end. But then I would find myself back buying wine and vodka and hiding it in my camera bags and my drawers and my boots in the closet. And so
Been there, done that, right
I
where
was
the
able,
lenses go. Right where the
yeah,
lenses go, that holds, there's some great beer slots in those. I know that well.
right. And so, over the years that we've been married, there would be times where I would either be sloppy about where I hid them and he would find them, or I would act in a certain way at night, usually critical. My, one of the things, my biggest shame was how my drinking caused me to resent Billy, because he was a normal drinker, that he could drink like one thing and then a month later maybe have something else. And so I think my resentments toward him are pretty common, but so I can't remember where I was going with that. But
Well,
anyway, so I was
did he,
teaching.
was his
Yeah,
nag,
go
I
ahead.
mean, his, I don't want to say, his, not criticism, what's the word, but not nagging, but was he the one that was kind of
Concern?
pushing you towards because I know the pushing will just, you can't push a rope, obviously, you've heard that thing. And I
Right.
was, when I got pushed about my drinking, I went the opposite direction with anger. So just curious if that was the case.
Well, I mean, he would say from time to time we would talk, and we would talk about the state of our marriage, and that at the root of the problems was my drinking, and that until I was willing to address that, there was really no use trying to like see a marriage counselor or anything like that. And I wasn't willing for a long time. I said, I've got this under control. Look at me. I just got this award for, educator. I just got this award for this. And I'm on the board of the directors of, I was just doing so much. And I thought that, of course, there's nothing wrong with me. My drinking's not problematic. It's just you, because you grew up in a home where, people had one drink at cocktail hour and then put away the bottles. You're the strange one, not me. That's what I did. And so, but like one year, about 10 years ago, I had put on a lot of weight, and I stopped drinking completely for a month. And then I started doing that thing of not drinking at home, and I got in shape and I lost 50 pounds and I was doing really well. But then I was able somehow to bring the drinking back into that equation without gaining the weight back. And again, it was me saying, oh, well, it can't be too bad if, I'm still able to do X, Y, and Z. But I taught yoga also, in addition to photography, at our local YMCA. for 20 years. And talk about a fraud. I would I would go teach my yoga class in the mornings. They were usually at 10:30, and I would get all the members, all blissed out in shavasana and everything, and then I would run and get in my car to run home to let the dog out and have a glass of wine before I went to school for my 11 o'clock class. And I just rush from here to there, drinking in the car on the way to work. I didn't cross that line that I made to myself that I would never drink at work until the last year. And so but let me see if I can circle back to
Talk about a fraud. The fraud thing just hit so home with me. I just wrote that down because that's one, and we were talking about this last night, what everyone else saw. It's so much as what you're saying, the drinks before, I drank so that I could go out and drink socially. That was, and then the whole time but I didn't go out to drink unless I had the drinks ready for when I got home at night.
Right.
So I could get back to my routine. But, I was, and I was talking with another couple last night just about that. They didn't know. I said, "Oh, did you ever see me out coaching your kids with a Diet Pepsi?" And they said, "Oh yeah, you always had one." I said, "You think I was thirsty? I was that thirsty that I had. Did you ever see me chewing beef jerky or corn nuts or, sunflower seeds? Yeah, you always had a bag with you." Yeah. Can you say breath cover up?
Right.
That was the fraud thing and I was very good at it. My kids didn't, they saw that I drank. My wife didn't know I don't think she fully believes me when I tell her the numbers. Because she's a very observant person, but I got away with it.
Me too. And I would go to soccer games, Will's soccer games, and I would have either wine in my water cup or vodka. And even the morning games, the 10 o'clock morning games on a Saturday, it's 10 o'clock. It's a Saturday. Sure, it's time to start, but nobody could tell. My thing was Altoids. I had Altoids everywhere. And Altoids in my sweater pockets that then my dog would find and chew a hole in the pockets to get to the Altoids. And one thing, vodka is of the heavy alcohols, as you guys probably know, the less you can't smell it as much as you can, like bourbon or something like that. So I would be pretending I was drinking sparkling water with cranberry juice, but it would be half full of vodka, and Billy didn't know. And sometimes it would be sitting on a table next to me, and he would be in the room, and I was so afraid he was going to say, "Can I have a sip of that?" And and it was sitting so close, and I just, in my mind, I'm just going, oh please, don't ask for a drink of it. That when I think back and think of that kind of tension that was going on in here, and for me, that you're only as sick as your secrets was the first AA slogan that jumped off the wall to me when I went into those rooms, because that was so much part of my story. So
did people know at all at work? Because again, this year has been a huge reveal for me with like my colleagues are blown out of the water. So how was it that way for you as well?
Yeah, I don't think they knew at all. I mean, like I said, they knew I liked to drink because we would go out to happy hour on Fridays after faculty meetings, and I could drink as much as some of the guys, but no, they didn't. And Billy could probably add to this, but I don't think they knew. And at school, I didn't have it in my office until the last year. I make these distinctions like that's some sort of important thing in it. But I would sometimes, if we were at school and we had a long day of portfolio reviews, I would say, I'll run home at lunchtime to let the dog out so that I could, swig a couple bottles of my mini Sutter Home Pinot Grigios in between. But the last year of my teaching, we moved buildings, which was very stressful. And then the last year I was looking at having to move 38 years of stuff from my office and my classroom, the studio at school, all home, while preparing for an exhibit at the University Gallery. This would all have been in 2019. And it started innocently enough. I would go to school sometimes on Sunday to grade student work, and I would take wine with me there in my office on a Sunday. Nothing wrong with that. But then the last year was so bad, and my new desk had a file cabinet with a key, and I started keeping my little mini Sutter Homes in that drawer. And in between classes, I would go in my office, close the door. Billy's office was right next to mine. Both of us kept our offices open because our classrooms were nearby, and we just walked in and out. But I would go in my office and close the door and have a drink. And I don't think people could tell, but I mean, by that time, I had crossed that line that I didn't just want to drink, I had to drink.
Did you know that yet, Susan?
Oh yeah, I could. There was this voice in my head during that time saying, how are you going to pull this off when you retire? This was this little thing in there saying, how are you going to afford this? I was, like you guys maybe too, spending $400, $500 a month on liquor, depending on how many times I went out with friends versus how much I just spent to have stuff at home. And also the little voice was saying, how are you going to keep this going since Billy's younger than I am, he did not retire. But then the other little voice in my brain is the one that always said, I'm having a party and nobody knows it. I would get buzzed and I would think, oh, how fun is this? I've got this buzz going and nobody really knows it. So
there's something pretty sick about, there's something pretty sick about that. I got away with it. That to me, that sort of line was around all of a sudden, like building up all this self-loathing and anxiety, and then getting up in the morning, and whether, he got me a cup of coffee or not, I knew that I pissed him. I either got away with it or I didn't get away with it. So as you're talking, my body is like reacting because our stories are so similar. So go on.
Okay, so the last day was, first, that I had my last commencement on May 3rd, 2019, and I turned 65 that same day. And a friend of mine, a former student from the 80s, so she's only about 5 years younger than me, had come back and was taking classes with me after retiring as an art teacher. And she was helping me move my things home from my office to our basement studio. And we were talking, and somehow she slipped in the conversation, something about rehab and recovery. And I was suddenly sober curious. And I said, well, tell me about your experience, if you don't mind. And she said, not at all. And in her case, she had also started drinking at school. She had her planning period, her last period. And her call was because her liver functionings were showing, enzymes were up, and her doctor told her she had to. And so she did a rehab followed by 12 steps. And so while she was telling me this, I remember distinctly seeing her across the room in the studio thinking, I want that. She looks so light and so happy and so free. I want what she has, but I didn't yet. That was in May. The morning of July 1st, I woke up and felt that thing like, oh shit, what did I say last night? And it was a Monday morning. So it was in the summer. On the Sunday, I had gone across the street to a friend of mine who invited me to sit in her pool and have wine. So I had done that, and then I'd come home and had more and more and more. And apparently said something mean to Billy. So I felt that when I woke up, and I thought, shit. So I went into the guest room, and there he had laid out the empty vodka bottle and 2 other wine bottles that were in here. And I went into the living room, and he came up from the studio, and his eyes were so red, he'd been crying. And he said he just was demoralized. He didn't know what to do anymore. He just didn't know. And that's when I had this surrender moment. I literally felt this tap on my shoulder. I felt the voice from inside, and it said, Susan, very calmly, it's time, let go, I've got you. And I either literally or physically or both just kind of sunk to the floor in this heap of surrender. And it felt so good and so scary. And I just said to him, I'll go to a meeting. So by that time I knew my friend that I could call her. And I did. And I said, I need to go to a meeting. And she said, I'll pick you up at 6. And so she took me to the local AA place that she attended, and it's the oldest one in Clarksville, and a bunch of old timer guys, a bunch of homeless people, people there because of court, that they had to from the courts, and, but I felt so welcome there. The first night I went, this guy gave me this big hug in the doorway and said, welcome home. And I remember thinking, wow, this guy knows me. And then anyway, so I kept going back. I got a sponsor. I worked the steps. It was going well. I got my 8-month chip, and then COVID hit. And so the meetings closed down. I had read Laura's book. I didn't know about her podcast, but in May, I guess, of 2020, I found TLC and joined, and the rest is history. I found my community, and I had been seeing a therapist before I stopped drinking, and then I was seeing her during my, those first 8 months of recovery before. And then Billy and I started seeing a therapist together, which was great, and we still see her from time to time.
Can I ask you a question about your therapist? Were you honest with your therapist before you stopped drinking about how much you were drinking?
Yeah, not at all. When I first saw her, she asked about my alcohol, and, I'd lied, a couple glasses a night. And she said, do you drink to get a buzz? And I looked at her like she was an alien. I said, well, yeah. Like, do you drink every day? She said, do you drink every day? And I said, well, yeah, why not? And then she said, do you think you're in control of your drinking, or is it in control of you? And I said, well, I'm in control, of course. And then, after our session, I would have a glass in the car of my Pinot Grigio waiting for me, because I didn't drive anywhere, hardly, running errands in town. I always had my thermal cup. So yeah, I didn't confide in her until after I went to that first meeting with my friend. And then when I had my next appointment with her, I said, I guess you won't guess what happened. And she was so excited and supportive.
Yeah.
But
I would love to know what
what
they're saying behind our backs when I told him.
the therapist?
Or just my family doctor, when I told him,
Oh.
yeah, I'll have a couple of beers a night, just unwind, and then sometimes a few more on the weekends.
Yeah, my doctor kind of knew. And one year when he was, I would have blood work, I have blood work drawn. He would do it every year because he knew I drank probably more than I should. And one year he called me after the blood work came in and said, well, your liver enzymes are up a little bit. It could be medication, but have you been drinking more than usual? And that was during the time my mom was dying, and I was driving back between the nursing home in Indiana and Tennessee, and I was drinking screwdrivers like from morning to night when I, and anyway, I said, well, come to think of it, I have. And he said, well, I would cut back on that a little bit. And so I did until the next time my liver enzymes were fine. And I said, well, okay, I got this under control. So, and so also as an artist, as a teacher, like I said, I hit it. As an artist, I just always drank when I created.
Mhm.
I mean, from the time I was a painting student in undergraduate school, I mean, I would stretch my canvases in my apartment and I would paint and drink Kessler and Coke and smoke Tartan 100s and think I was on the left bank in Paris, But
Susan, let me ask you a question, and I want you to
yeah.
be honest. Do you believe you were more creative when you were drinking, even now? Because I hear people say no, not at all, but I don't know if I believe that about myself. I don't know if it's that I have more creativity, but the alcohol dropped barriers to maybe let my creativity out more. I don't know, but I still, everyone says, oh no, you're just as funny, you're just as creative. And I think the talent or the creativity is still there, but I think I dropped barriers to release it. I don't know if that makes any sense, but I still think I was more creative when I was drinking. And I hate to say that.
I don't. I mean, if you had asked me then, I would say, oh, of course drinking just makes it more fun. And because as a photographer in my studio, when I work in the darkroom, Billy and I share the basement studio, but when I'm in the darkroom, he can't open the door because I have the safe light on and he could ruin all of my paper. And so that was my safe haven. I could, and I would have a glass of wine in there and I'd always keep something covering the glass, because you don't want chemicals coming into the liquid that you're then going to ingest. But I had that covered because I kept cover on it. But so that summer of 2019, when I was working to make new work for that exhibit, I started in the darkroom at 10 in the morning, I was starting drinking at 10 in the morning. And but anyway, back to your question. No, I don't think it made me more creative. It was just a habit. I mean, it's just what I did. It was fun. It was part of the process. And when I would go on shooting road trips, a lot, solo road trips, I would, have alcohol in the car and in my backpack if I was going to hike to an overlook to take photos. The wine was my reward. The wine was my companion, my friend. So
how was the start when you made I guess it was at that meeting that kind of kicked it off? How did the progression go from there? I mean, was it I was done and life was great from that point? Was it still the battle?
No, it was easier because Billy didn't drink. When I talk to listen to people on TLC who are doing this and their spouses are still either active alcoholics or they just drink a lot and are not interested in stopping for their loved one. But Billy is not a drinker, so we just didn't have it in the house. I didn't go many places during those first 8 months before COVID. And then COVID, like for many people, made it easier because I didn't go anywhere. And I was so grateful. I kept thinking of this, like, what if I was still drinking during this pandemic, and I would have had to sneak out of the house to go to a liquor store to get the stuff and hide it in the house. You know, something that I thought of the other day I wanted to mention that made me feel so guilty. I think I've told Billy this, but he's listening in the hallway, so he'll hear it anyway. But sometimes I would drive up to the house and be hoping that when I turned the corner to see our house, that Billy's car wouldn't be there,
Mhm.
so that it would be easier for me to get my stuff in the house and hidden before he came home.
Yeah.
And I remember thinking, who does that? I love this man, but I am hoping that he's not home so that it's easier for me to transport my shit into my hiding places. And that made me feel like scum.
Yeah.
You know, and but I just kept thinking, well, you know, that's what I do. Yeah. So creatively now, you know, I was worried, you know, am I going to be able to feel the same sort of high from creating new tintypes that I did when I was drinking? And I do, and I can. And that's a great thing to realize, that it was not dependent upon the alcohol. My curiosity about process and writing about my content of what I'm, you know, exploring with my work and teaching. I taught my first, after the light catchers, when I gained experience and you know, experience and confidence with the light catchers, I started a Zoom online photo class that lasted 6 weeks in February and March, where people paid me and I taught them. They were 7 friends my age, mostly retired, but it was great. And then I'm going to start offering more starting in the fall, and some on the ground workshops as well. Yeah. And then I'm going to try to turn my exhibit into a book, and the book, you know, I don't know. I've got all sorts of things. I'm so excited about the possibilities, and you know, and that's one thing I did want to tell you something else. In terms of my toolbox, that when I stopped drinking, I picked up very expensive alcohol-based markers and lots of different interesting adult coloring books. And I probably have over 200.
What do you mean alcohol-based markers?
Oh, well, markers, some are water-based, some are alcohol-based. It just means they are rich. They're not water soluble, but they're richer in pigment. And
so it has nothing to do with sobriety.
No, right.
Okay,
right.
I didn't know if that was.
No, of course that's where you would go, Jeff.
I don't know.
You would go straight to the
are you
pen sniffing?
Yeah,
thing.
pen sniffing, licking
No,
the tip of the pen. I don't know.
You can't sniff the pens, but I've probably made close to 200 of these, and they are meditative for me. At night, Billy reads in bed to me. When we drive someplace, I read while he drives. I can read. So we always have a novel going that we're reading out loud, and
that's great.
I color, and so, you know, so these things, people ask me when I share them with them, they say, well, what are you going to do with them? And my answer is always nothing. You know, they're not a product. It's the process of doing it that is, you know, meditative for me. But when I was hand coloring new work for my show that just opened here in May, I hadn't been hand coloring. I started making tintypes about 10 years ago. And so I stopped hand painting my photos then. But for the new work, I got a new kind of pastel, a new kind of medium, and I started hand coloring my new work that is our hands in different positions that, and anyway, turns out I learned a whole lot about color combinations, or relearned, by doing these pages, so that when I went back to hand coloring prints, I had this, I don't know, it was wonderful. It was just like this
Yeah, that's beautiful.
synchronicity, this thing that I was drawn to, and then it ends up becoming part of my personal fine art work.
I love that. Such a beautiful story of the process, right? We just, we want to, you said earlier, I want what that person has, right? And there's steps to that. You don't go from A to B without, the steps in between.
Mm-hmm.
I just wanted, when you were talking today, it really made me think about, you and I are so much the same in our stories. I had a dance studio, you were a dancer. All that bargaining, that we go through, and I'm sure that's pretty universal. I'm a fellow boot hider. So I had really cool boots that actually had served a great purpose, right? Because my boots were awesome and the wine made them stay nice.
Mm-hmm.
We both have normal drinker husbands.
Mm-hmm.
We both got Educator of the Year. And we could always talk our husbands into drinking again. I know my husband was very happy when I wasn't drinking, but there'd be times when, we almost lost everything in Barcelona. And I used that opportunity to start drinking again. Like, I'm so stressed out. The only thing that's going to help me is a glass of wine.
Mm-hmm.
And he was so relieved at that particular time, because we almost lost our passport. So it's a long story. Excuse me. For me, I was teaching social workers how to work with families with addiction. So the cognitive dissonance was like Mount Everest, right?
Mm-hmm.
And then teaching a class, stopping off at the Nugget grocery store, getting my twist top wine and drinking it on the way home, praying that I wouldn't get pulled over for
Right.
driving under the influence after I'm teaching social work.
Right.
What I see for you, you're such a beautiful artist. You have so much talent. The people that are watching have no idea how talented you are. But being an artist has a little bit of, oh, it's okay to be a drinker when you're an artist. So can you
Right.
talk about that a little bit?
Yeah, I mean, the history is full of, the stories, the Hemingways and the Jackson Pollocks, the painters and the writers, and, who were alcoholics. And I don't know. It was all just tied up together. So I was worried when I quit, how's that going to work? But I, it works. And so my message to any other artists out there who are worried that they would not be able to have the same sort of experience, creative experience without alcohol, that, it's possible.
I think that's
it's even
beautiful.
better. I mean, the clarity that we all talk about, the clarity of, and the less anxiety. I mean, I would get so anxious. Something would go wrong and I would just like, oh, why is this happening to me? And, banging things and cussing and just being like an asshole, and then drinking to calm the anxiety, which was fueling the anxiety, which now, without it, I just, things just don't upset me as much as they used to.
What would you tell, what's some advice that you would give to somebody, they come to you, Susan, and say, I feel like I have a drinking problem, like, what advice would you give another person who is looking to examine their relationship with alcohol?
Read Laura's book. And that if they're thinking about it, they probably, you know, do have, you know, a dependency that is worrying them. You know, so many people, at least in my circle of friends, would probably not have gone to an AA meeting because of either just, you know, that they think it's a cult, or they wouldn't want to, you know, anybody in town to see them. I would tell them about TLC. I would tell them that that they could, I could be their person to, what I call, one of our TLC members, and she talked about it when she shared her story. So I don't think she, well, I don't need to share her name, but she's a former student of mine. And not too long after I stopped drinking, I had lunch with her and another friend and mentioned it. And she said, oh, you know, can I call you sometime? And I said, sure. And she did. And we met about a year ago. Well, it was May of 2020. And she joined TLC. We kind of joined at the same time. And, you know, now she's over a year. And it's just so wonderful to see the domino effects, you know, to see the rippling effects of how your story can, and experience can help someone else's. It's, you know, it's pretty amazing.
Oh, for sure. I mean, service to others keeps us sober. I mean, that's
Right.
one of the most beautiful parts about sobriety.
Yeah.
Jeff.
Well, you know, what really strikes me on this, you know, Peggy, you just said about if someone examining what the drinking, who it affects. You know, I've said before, this is, I thought I had a drinking problem. My family had my drinking problem. And Susan, what you exemplify right now is the guy that's behind that door, Billy, because I saw you before we actually went live, and I could just see the enthusiasm that he has for you and your
That's
sobriety.
beautiful.
And that is what is the power. If that demonstrates, you know, are we doing this? Is this just affecting us? Well, Billy, I don't even know the guy, but you can just see by the enthusiasm of supporting you, how important your sobriety, how much it affected him or affects him. So it's not a single deal in this. It's not about Susan had a problem. Billy had your problem. And Billy wanted you to fix your, you know, for all of you, for your family.
And that's so true. And in the beginning, I was, when I was going to AA and I was seeing the therapist, before he and I started seeing someone together, I wanted him to join Al-Anon. I wanted him to be able to understand and talk to other spouses of alcoholics, and he was not interested at all. He wasn't interested in going to a group where a bunch of people sat around and talked about their spouses or whatever. And I was in the beginning kind of bitchy about it and saying, well, you know, I'm doing all this work, you know, on me, and, you know, in order for you to understand what I'm going through, I need you to go, you know, do your work. And I said it one time on a meeting that Laura was leading, one of the few meetings way back in the beginning when she was doing a meeting, and I raised my hand and talked, and she basically sort of told me, you know, keep to your own side of the street. Let him figure out what's best for him to come to terms with this. And once I realized that, yeah, I just, and so the marriage counselor that we found was really good, and we've been working on, you know, communication, how to communicate. And for me, it has so much to do with how much I had closed myself in and opening up, trying to be vulnerable with intimacy and tenderness, and, you know, all of that was hard for for me because but it's a process, and I'm feeling better in part because now I'm doing some early childhood and teenage trauma work with the therapist, doing some tapping and, talking through some things that happened to me as a young person because of drinking. And, yeah,
Hey, you go through that, don't you go through that period where I know for me, I didn't want to share anything with him at first. I wanted him to be involved, yet when he tried to even do anything, I was like, back off, this is my thing. So there was this, really a readjustment of relationship, because my relationship with him is, even though, I was, the difference between you and I is I didn't really drink a lot until, I was in my 50s, which, it's not here or there, but it was a completely different relationship, because while I was drinking, he was my father. He was, we didn't have an equal relationship. I was the child. He was the dad, always scolding me, always telling me I didn't have, I was weak in character, or if you really loved me, you would stop drinking, all of these things that just drove, like Jeff was talking about, driving it underground, right? Driving it right into my boot in the closet, right? Because when he started shaming and blaming me, that's when it went underground. There was never, like Billy, to me, seems like he came to you and said, I love you, I'm worried about you. I have a financial analyst husband. I call him financial analyst. And so his life's on a spreadsheet, right? If it doesn't fit in one of his accounting categories, he doesn't know what the hell to do with it. So the relationship has changed. It's almost like we have a different kind of marriage now. We're partners, we're equals. I don't have to go to him to seek approval anymore. Did I do good today? Was I, and working through the same thing that you're talking about, a lot of childhood memories where, I was just, I'm okay. Nothing to see here, right?
You just froze up, Peggy, but boy, you nailed it with that as far as being I was definitely the child, with Elizabeth and I. That was 100%.
Go ahead, Jeff.
No. I want you to finish. You froze up there, but yeah, I never realized that until you said it. But she was completely that's exactly how our relationship was when I was drinking. And I wanted it that way. She had to, because of my drinking, she took over all the bills. She took over all the serious stuff, because the only thing I could contribute was the goofiness, which was trying to get away from having to deal with life. If I couldn't drink it away, I could try and blow it off and laugh it away, because I couldn't face it. I didn't know how to face it. I was never given the tools to face it.
Right. Yeah.
We got to have you and Billy on. Would Billy think about doing this? I think it would be a blast to have Billy on.
So, because I remember when Christopher on TLC was talking about a subgroup for spouses, he thought that was a good idea. And I don't know if that went anywhere, but I do think that a conversation, with alcoholics, significant others, partners, spouses, would be great. I mean, I saw
we'll have to do that.
Ketsia and her husband. I watched that one, and it was wonderful.
It's beautiful.
Yeah.
To hear him talk about, she would say, "What did you think that day that we were doing this? Like, did you know how drunk I was, or things like that?" And because I've said to Billy, sometimes, I bet you didn't know that, whatever on that. And one time, this is a quick one, but we were at my sister's for Thanksgiving in Indiana, and the day after Thanksgiving, I don't know, was so anxious. I found a reason to go to the store so I could go to the liquor store so I could get a pint of vodka, and I proceeded to drink it in secret in the guest room on and off all day. And then before bed, I took a Xanax, which was not a good idea. And so I woke up about an hour later to go to the bathroom, and I couldn't walk. I could barely talk. I couldn't get words out. I remember thinking, I know what I want. And Billy was scared shitless. And he almost called 911. And I finally said, I'm fine. I went to sleep. In the morning, I woke up and I felt so horrible. And he said, you scared the shit out of me. I thought you were having a stroke. And I felt shame. I felt horrible, but it didn't stop me.
That exact same thing happened to me.
Really?
Exact same thing. Yes. He was crying and said, I thought you were having, oh my God, I have goosebumps. I thought you were having a stroke.
Yeah.
Oh my gosh. Wow.
It's so unfair what I put Elizabeth through,
Yeah.
and and it wasn't all the time. It was probably just, individual events that I like what you're just saying that stick out.
Yeah. And sometimes I could cut back. I mean, we spent 2 weeks in Italy 7 years ago. And I would stop, like Billy is a great travel companion, but he is nonstop. Museums and churches, and Italy, is just full of art and stuff. And so I would, at a certain point in the mid-afternoon, say, I need to just park here and have a couple glasses of wine. You go on to see some more Caravaggios, and I'll just stay here. And I would have, and then on the way back to our pension, sometimes I'd say, can we stop and get one of these little, it's kind of an in between a full bottle and a little bottle to take to the room. And he'd say, sure. And so for those 10 days, I mean, I just had, moderate, and I was fine. I had a great time. But as soon as we got home, I was back into my routine of, drinking more, up to 2 bottles of wine a day, probably. It's amazing that, well,
You know what's crazy is when you were saying that, I can just remember times with Elizabeth where I guess I lost good time with her because I would have loved to just sit and have her drink as much as I drank, and I just think how much fun that would have been to just, if she had just, pounded, it would have been a debacle. It would have ended, but that was where my mind was. It was how much fun if I didn't have to control it with her, if I didn't have to sip, my beer with her or drink responsibly with her, where I could just drop my guard and be in my mind. That would be, now I'm sure she would have loved just seeing me, drool all over myself and, slur around. But that was my mindset. I just felt like, boy, we could be having so much more fun together if, I could actually drink with her at this event like I want to, instead of sneaking it or whatever.
Oh, yeah.
I think about now with you guys. I mean, the people I've gotten close to in sobriety, going, damn, wouldn't it be cool just one day if we all got drunk together? That's my sick mind, right? Like, I'll never have that experience with you guys. And I'm like,
oh, well.
She would have been really fun to drink with. Right.
And that's that euphoric recall coming in, that what a great experience that would be.
Right.
But
I mean, obviously it's not going to happen.
Oh, I know, but.
And this doesn't relate to that, but Peggy, you said something once that really clicked with me too. Like maybe somebody asked you, well, can't you just have one glass of champagne at the wedding? And, your response was something like, well, no, because I wouldn't want just one glass. I'd want the whole bottle. One glass isn't going to, make me, feel happy. And that's the thing with me too. I mean, people don't understand sometimes that it's not just that you can't just have one glass. It's just that it's pointless. I mean, why
it's torture.
Yeah, it's
torture. It's like having one cookie, right? Like, why bother? Yeah, so funny. What are three benefits that you like, benefits we haven't talked about? What are 3 things that you noticed that sobriety has brought you?
truth, honesty, the feeling of having no secrets, just no secrets. It's just phenomenal. From Billy, from my kids, from my friends or coworkers, and all of that. Clarity, more clarity in my mind, because I'm not spending so much time planning, where to get it and how to dispose of it and which liquor store I haven't been to more recently. And I don't know, just much more, so many more possibilities, things, like all sorts of things seem to be happening in a way that are opening doors. And part of it is connections I'm making with other sober people. Some is just, well, retirement helps with time. But I don't know, I wouldn't trade it for anything. And when I think about it and say sometimes, why did I wait so long? I realize that that's really not something to dwell on, because it happened, I stopped when it was time for me. And I really don't know if I could have done it when I was still teaching, because when I decided to stop, it kind of became my focus. I was able to say, okay, I'm serious about this. I'm going to I didn't go to 90 and 90, but I was going to 4 meetings a week and things like that. But so yeah, honesty, clarity, freedom from the weight of carrying that shame and guilt on me. So
what would Billy say? What do you think Billy would say? 3 things that he notices about you.
I think he would say I'm kinder, because when it came to step 4 or 5, where I had to make amends with people I had, done things to, he was really the only one on the list. I took it out all on him. And and he has said to me over the last 2 years, it's so great that you're back, to have you back. And I think that the me before, I drank when he and I met and got married. I did stop for 2 years, the year before we got married and the year after, but I was a dry drunk. I wasn't ever planning for that to be a long-term thing. I just did it to prove to myself and to him that I wasn't an alcoholic. But I think he would say, yeah, just that I'm back. He once used the analogy that my drinking was like I was having an affair, and I didn't get it at the time when he said that. But I certainly get it now. I was having an affair with alcohol, and so.
Paul said the same thing. I have Peggy back. Yeah. Wow. Okay. So I'm going to do a rapid fire, and then Jeff can close it down.
Okay.
What is your favorite food?
Pasta with pesto with fresh basil and sun-dried tomatoes, and I like Italian food, so I guess
awesome.
Pasta.
You're making me hungry at 6 a.m. in the morning. Favorite movie?
I was writing these down and I skipped that one. I can't believe it. Rear Window. Alfred Hitchcock, photographer.
Oh yeah, definitely. Place to visit.
Northern New Mexico, Chicago, and Italy. I have 3.
That's awesome. Favorite word?
Light.
I would have picked that for you too.
I like that.
Song.
Imagine or Let It Be. Anything by John Lennon.
Oh, love those. And favorite alcohol-free drink?
Sparkling water and cranberry juice with no ice.
Oh, I'm a no ice person too. Wow. And last one, favorite photographer.
Well, historically, there's a Czechoslovakia, Josef Sudek, who lived in Prague, who photographed Prague in the early 20th century. He's kind of obscure. Contemporary, Sally Mann is a Southern photographer whose work I've always admired and followed and emulated in different ways. So that would be two people.
Is there any way that we can have the viewers, like, do you have a website that people can view your work on? Because you are ridiculously talented.
Thank you. My website is in the process of being updated, but you can still see the older work, and it's susanbryantphoto.com. And I have more recent work on my Instagram, which is Susan Bryant Photo. But I'm going to be, my website's in the process of being updated as soon as I get the new data to my guy who's doing my website. So
I'll get those links put up on the website and the Facebook pages.
okay.
That would be great.
Well, thank you, Susan. You are just so special to me and been such an important part of my sobriety journey.
And you me.
Yeah.
You know, that Susan, you once again just make me feel I'm not alone. And it just cracks me up, because someone that I think on paper we're so vastly different, and yet Peggy said, you're telling her story and you're telling mine. And that's what's just, you hear that a lot, but the commonalities is so many things that are just, it's frightening. But I tell you that the smile, you can see the peace in your face, and the call, it's all been lifted. And that's what I think is huge for me, is all this, and the list of what's been lifted grows every day. It's a realization every day. It's like something else that I realize is I'm free of.
Right. I mean, that's what I wanted to just end with anybody, especially new people, is to tell them it's worth it. It gets easier. It's not always better. It's not always easy, but it gets easier. It gets better. You won't want to go back to the life, that desperate life, you left. So just.
I can't remember your line, but it was where the negative ends and the positive begins. We start off the negatives of trying to be creative without alcohol. And now it's the positives of being able to be creative without alcohol. It was, I have to go last night to this dinner with these people without alcohol. Now I got to go to dinner last night. I got to go to dinner with them last night without alcohol. It's now something I can gain versus it was something that I was looking at as a loss.
Right.
So, yeah. Well, thank you, Susan. Unbelievable. Great stuff. Thank you so much for sharing. And we got to get Billy on. I think that would just be, I think we could get several of us, because if there's a safety in numbers, I could probably get Elizabeth down here to hear, but it's fascinating to hear that side of the story. But just seeing him, the enthusiasm for your sobriety, what a message. And just shows you that this isn't about us. This is about a lot more than just us. So, but thanks for being on. Hang on there.
Thank you.
I don't even know. We got a full lineup coming up, but some very good stuff for coming shows. And just check out Peggy's page, This Side of Alcohol. Fantastic support group. We always love The Luckiest Club, TLC, with Laura McCowan, who was, what's her book called? Is it just The Luckiest Club?
We Are the Luckiest.
We Are the Luckiest. I was blanking on it. I was sitting there going, God, I know this, but I knew I'd butcher it. Sorry about that, Laura, if you're getting feedback. But this side of alcohol, TLC, and then we got the Getting Back to Zero stuff. The web page is up and growing and getting more and more functional, but just gettingback-to-zero.com. So we're going to have some fun. And I just added a section for pictures, which Susan, I'd love you to add, but I want to get people can jump in and dump in their pictures of what sobriety is, their definition of sobriety in film. So Susan, I'm sure you could smoke us all with some great pictures in there. But thanks again and have a great weekend, everyone. And we will we'll talk soon. Be safe and keep talking to each other.